Seeing what's broken in development is very easy. You just write a statement and you can see it, but in production it's pretty hard. So what I'm doing is writing a new log system where it logs out the whole context of what's going on and then just outputs that. So let me show you how I did that. The way that the logs would work is that the user uses the app and accesses inventory IO, and then when they make a request, it goes to the server and the server attaches log information like the user ID, the request ID, and other information. It makes a request to the database responds. This is where it attaches more information, such as if it hit a cache, if there are any errors, and then that is what I store and use to debug. I think this is called canonical logs or wide events. This is where you have all the information stored in a single line rather than having multiple logs. You just have one big one which you can sort through and find the information of what you're looking for. This has its trade-offs, but it's easier to search and look through, and especially at 3 a.m. it's easier to understand this rather than searching for multiple lines of information. This is what I'm going to try implementing. The logger consists of error go, logger, and the middleware, and there's a help handler function that basically ties everything together. So let's start off with main. First of all, this is an implementation that I've written that I've basically taken out from the actual code base, so it's easier to explain. Here we have a quick main.go function that has some API that returns errors, and we have the wrap handler, which basically checks if the response is an error and checks if it's an API error or if it's an internal server error, and then adds an attribute if it's an error and appends an attribute that's successful if it was successful. In the logger.go, we have a function that basically shows how attributes are added. So they're added to the context. There's an append attribute, a get attribute, which returns all the attributes that are stored in the request logs, which is up here. And there is a set error, which says that this request is an error. The middleware function creates the new request log, adds all the attributes, and at the end, it will append all the attributes and then return the attributes at the end. There's an error.go that essentially is just a helper function that says whether the error is an API error or an internal server error. It's heavily inspired by the HTTP log middleware library, and also there's a YouTuber called Anthony GG, and he did a video on error handlers that return an error. And I basically taken everything and put it in one place. Here's a quick look at how it works. If I do a bad request, it returns an internal server error status code, but in the actual logs, it gives an error, bad data error, and then canonical logs, a bunch of logs, just a single line. And that is the implementation. I've got a quick readme on my reasonings and what I was inspired by. Also, if you want to have a read through yourself, I'll attach the GitHub link.